Today's show sponsor is Sienna Dawn Media Integrated Marketing Agency. Sienna Dawn Media is more than just a marketing agency. They're your partners in progress. Their mission is simple: to alleviate marketing bandwidth, allowing creative business owners to focus on what they set out to do: create. Sienna Dawn Media empowers creatives to thrive without the burden of managing their own social media and marketing campaigns. So if you're ready to set sail toward new horizons, let Sienna Dawn Media chart the course and steer your business toward success. Visit siennadawnmedia.com.
Blah, 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 blah.
Welcome to the Our Forever Smiles podcast, a podcast created to support mothers of children who were born with clefts and those who love them. I'm your host, Laura Arroyo, and I'm also a mother of a daughter who was born with a surprise cleft palate. I know the challenges you face every day. Whether you have just learned the difficult news of your baby's cleft lip or palate, you're in the midst of pre-op or post-op, or you're an OG cleft mom, this podcast is for you. In a weekly conversation, we will talk about everything from feeding and speech therapy to surgery and school. We'll share tips from guest experts and advocates, and even share a little joy in the process. You can listen to Our Forever Smiles wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe and stay tuned. Hello, and welcome back to the Our Forever Smiles Cleft Mom Diaries and Support podcast. I am Laura Arroyo. Before we jump into this episode, I would like to invite you to join this community to hear conversations with other cleft moms and advocates that will help you feel supported along your journey. All I want you to do is click on the follow or subscribe button. I love your support, and it's incredible to see us all come together. So I can't wait for all that we have in store this year, and just thank you so much for subscribing. As a note, we are not medical doctors, and we do not intend for you to use information that we share here as medical advice. We are parents and advocates who love our children, and we are sharing our own personal experiences. I am pleased to share that we have Hannah Scott on the podcast today. It was really a long time coming because I had to, no fault of Hannah's, but I had to reschedule a couple of times, and Hannah has just been very gracious. And I know what it is like to have a 2-year-old and just many family needs. And so I am just so grateful to have her on today. Hannah is a stay-at-home mom and she's a writer. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi.
It's so wonderful to have you here today.
Thank you.
So I wanted to ask, is your 2-year-old your only child?
No, so I actually have an older son, and he will be 4 in November.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, that's so sweet. And so your youngest is your child that is cleft affected. Your 4-year-old is not cleft affected.
No, he's not. It's just my 2-year-old that is.
How did you learn about your daughter's cleft?
We went in for our 20-week anatomy scan. I think it was actually like 22 weeks. And they saw it on there and told us, and they were like, we're going to send you to some specialists to double check it and see if that's what it is. And so we went, I think, the next week to maternal fetal medicine, and they checked and they're like, yep.
Wow. Were you by yourself for your anatomy scan, or you?
My husband with me.
Oh, wow. And what was like his reaction to finding out? Was there like some denial? I know like sometimes people, I don't know, I guess like sometimes the first stage of learning about this new and shocking information is maybe it's not true. Maybe that second scan will prove that it's not going to be what they say it is.
No, that was exactly us. As soon as we heard about the initial scan and they were like, okay, we think that your baby is going to have a cleft, we were like, what? What does that even mean? We started doing all the research and stuff. We turned off our phones, didn't talk to anyone for the rest of the day, and went out to dinner with our son, and we talked about it, and we were just like, we're just going to pray that when we go in for this next scan, like, maybe they were just seeing things on the first one, like maybe it's not actually there. But even if it is there, we just put it in God's hands and knew that it was going to be okay.
Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. While they were doing the scan, did you sense any, because I know sometimes the ultrasound tech can't really share much information about what's happening. Did you sense that something was wrong in that moment, or was it just business as usual?
It was pretty much business as usual. I think that our ultrasound tech was more concerned with making sure she didn't accidentally tell us the gender because we wanted it to be a surprise.
Mm.
And so it just went on as normal, and I didn't even know anything was wrong until I met with my OB right afterwards.
Oh, and was like directly after, you didn't have to wait or anything?
I had a short wait for that appointment, but it was maybe like 15 minutes
Oh,
afterwards.
okay, but not like the next week or
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Yeah, no, same day.
Yeah. Did they send you to get was it a fetal MRA?
It was just another ultrasound with maternal fetal medicine, and it was a longer ultrasound, so they, like, went over everything
Yeah.
and got the baby to move around and make sure it was there.
Yeah. No, was that appointment, like, immediately after, or did you have to wait for that?
I wanna say that it was, like, the week after, maybe? We had a little bit of waiting and a lot of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I imagine. In between that time, I know that you were hopeful for the possibility of a different outcome, but did you, like, try to, like, Google or try to find resources? What was your from the minute that you found out to that next scan where they confirmed it, what did you search or didn't search, or what were your next steps?
I searched anything and everything. I am very much a Doctor
Yeah.
Google person, is what my husband likes to call me. Anything, I'm on Google. Okay, what does this mean? I knew very much about all things cleft affected when we went into this next scan. I was like, okay, this is what we can expect. And I think right after that scan is when I started joining like these mom
Right.
groups and everything like that.
Yeah. I actually, surprisingly, I didn't find out about the groups until my daughter was about 3 months, and
Oh,
yeah, I was late to it, but it was really transformative, and that's, like, kind of the reason why I started this podcast, because I feel like we needed more voices and more, like, community around this, because I to you
mhm.
not, every single person that I've spoken to, almost all of them have said when they said, "Your baby has a cleft," they're like, "What? What is a cleft?" You hear about it, you think about it as, like, this distant problem, like, that doesn't really happen in the United States, or that's a very privileged thing to say, but it's just like, you just don't think about it in that way, it's not positioned in that way, and yeah, I just really wanted to create, like, a community around that, and I was so grateful to find community in those groups, because
Yeah.
it also made me feel, like, less alone, right? Before I found the groups or any type of resource, the resources online feel very clinical, but then when I found other moms talking about it, it was more this feeling of, "Oh, I'm not alone." Like,
Yeah.
they're talking about ear tubes for your kid. Okay, so this is normal protocol versus I'm feeling like the hospital is just telling me whatever, or they're just like, you know what it felt like in the beginning? It felt very experimental. And when
Yeah.
had I found like the group before, I'm like, oh, okay, this is the normal steps that children have to go through, children
Mhm.
that were born with a cleft. And just for context for you as well, I didn't know until my daughter was born. And so that kind of set us back
Yeah.
a little bit. So I've had to do a lot of Googling after the fact, but she was already in my arms, and a lot
Yeah.
more challenging.
I bet you were in
Oh,
shock.
yeah, yeah. Me being a first time mom, the other piece of it is, like, I didn't know. I mean, I had read all the books, I had did everything, right? I watched all the YouTube videos, and I think that nothing can really prepare you for motherhood. What I always say, people that want to start family planning is, like, everything that they say, the good, bad, and the ugly is true. Like, all all of
All of
it
it.
is true. And so being a first time mom, I'm really learning as I go. So having a 4-year-old and now a 2-year-old, I guess what was like the differences in your birth experience or just like having like that postpartum period? Because I'm assuming that your first child was also really difficult, even because you're a first time mom. It's really
Yeah.
challenging to adjust. Yeah.
Honestly, I would consider both of my birthing experiences traumatic. Uh, with my son, we were in the hospital. I was in the hospital for a week before they finally induced me to have him, and then he stayed in the NICU for a week. I had preeclampsia,
Mhm.
and so that was a lot. And so I would say that experience prepared me a little more for the cleft experience just because I was like, "Okay, I've already been through a traumatic birth, like, how much worse can it get?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And luckily, I started showing signs of preeclampsia with my daughter too. So they induced me, but we made it to 37 weeks this time. My son was a preemie, but they induced me at 37 weeks and had her, and then she was in the hospital for a week trying to figure out the whole feeding thing. So it wasn't really anything that we weren't used to already, like having to stay for extra time or like crazy things happening. It was just the norm for us at that point.
Yeah. Now, is your daughter, does she have a bilateral clef or is it a unilateral?
Unilateral.
Unilateral. And the issues that you all had, so my daughter also spent time in the NICU as well due to feeding and just trying to get her to meet her feeding goals. And of course, they won't send you home until you're able to do that. Are they, was, what types of issues did you encounter during feeding?
So it was really just her trying to learn how to drink out of the bottles that they were giving her because they had the tube in her nose for a while. And we were like, okay, that's fine, but she needs to learn how to eat with this. Like, we need to be practicing. And so they tried I can't remember the bottle it was that they had. Pigeon feeder? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, my daughter
That's what our
loved the pigeon. We actually,
Oh, really?
yeah, we started on the Dr. Brown's, and that didn't work out for her, so we switched to pigeon,
Okay.
and yeah, fantastic bottle.
We were flip flopped.
Mhm.
They tried the pigeon with my daughter and she wasn't getting it. And so being in the mom group already, like I had ordered all these Dr. Brown's bottles because I was like, okay, like we're gonna do this. These are gonna work. And so we brought a bunch of them into the hospital and we're like, can we try these? Because it has a little disc in it. And we're like, the pigeon's not working. Can we please try these? And so they started trying those with her and we got to feed her some too. But she took those really well. And she was started eating more and more every day and met her goal within a week, and so we were ready to go home.
Yeah. Oh, man, I love that. What was the decision to even place the tube now? Was that something that they told you was gonna happen? It was, like, automatic, or what was that, what was the decision based around?
So I think they just wanted to do that because they were worried about her when she came out, she didn't know how to do anything, couldn't have suction on anything, so they were like, "Alright, we're gonna place this tube until we can start getting her to eat a normal way." So we were trying to feed her, like, while she still had the tube.
Mm.
We were just going around that, and then if she didn't take the amount that they like, the goal that they wanted her to meet, they would tube feed the rest.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
In hindsight, do you feel like you could have just started with the bottles?
I think
Yeah.
so. I think it probably would have been a lot easier, and I bet that we would have been out quicker too.
Yeah. Because I think about that. I've never heard of a family where they just automatically put, um, the 2, like, they make the decision to do that, so that's really interesting. They told me that my daughter was 1 day away from being put on the tube because she wasn't meeting her goals, and part of it was because she was probably so exhausted from trying and all this stuff, so when we finally got her to beat it was a tremendous victory, like, we were, wow, I can
And,
remember.
it's exciting when she finally started drinking out of the bottle.
Then we, like, don't wanna jinx it, and it's just
Mhm.
oh goodness, when you think back to that time, it's really it's something really difficult that we all or that the people listening here have gone through or definitely maybe feeling if they're in the midst of their journey. Now, has your daughter had her repair yet?
Yes, so she had her lip repair and rhinoplasty at I think she was about between 4 and 5 months, and then she had her palate and tubes put in her ears right before she turned 1.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. Now, for her lip, wait, does she plan on having any additional surgeries or
I think they're still gonna have to do, like, a bone graft and stuff for because she has the gap in her gums. That won't be until she's 6 or 7, I think, and then I think they'll have to do maybe, like, a nose revision or something because one side has kinda sunk down a little bit. It's not bad, it's just a little bit noticeable, but I think she's gonna want that done if they offer it.
yeah. I know some families use like a nasal elevator. I don't know if you've seen those that kind of
Mhm.
help support that. I guess depending on the age, of course, when they're younger, it's easier to mold. But yeah, I don't know what at what age they stop doing that. Now, in just preparing, I do want to go back to talk about just her birth in general, just the day or like the day that you were able to see her. Did she look the way that you expected her to look? What was that moment or that feeling that you had when you finally were able to see it in real life and hold her?
Well, so our moment was a little crazy seeing her because I had originally said we wanted the gender to be a surprise. In one of the extra scans, they sent the results through the online app portal thing that we have, and it said male. And we were like, dang, they told us. And so we were like, all right, it's a boy. And then I go in to be induced, have her the next day, and my doctor's like, I thought you said they accidentally told you this was a boy.
Yes.
I was like, yeah, they did. And she's, no, this is a girl. And we were like, huh? So not only did we have that shock, then we actually got to see her cleft. And she really did look like we were expecting because we got some really good 3D scans of her almost looking right at the ultrasound camera. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
Uh, but she looked exactly like we were expecting, just the opposite gender.
Yeah. Wow. So did you have any like feeling of like nervousness of like your child having a cleft, being a girl or a boy? Did you have a preference in the gender at all?
So I think when we initially found out, like after the second scan, when they like confirmed it, I was really praying for a boy because I thought just like going through all the groups and seeing like pictures and stuff, I'm like, maybe a boy would have an easier time, especially when it comes to like bullying and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we had hoped that it would be a boy, but you know what? This little girl in here, she is mean and she is tough, and I'm not worried at all for her.
I love that, yeah. I know I've heard of a lot of moms have had that feeling of beauty standards are so different for women, and it's a lot easier for men to hide their clefts because
Yeah.
they can grow a mustache and no one will ever know, and so it is one of those things that kind of, I feel like, hits some moms a little bit harder. It's a little bit tougher when they find out, like, "Oh, it's a girl." Also, clefts are more prevalent in boys too, so it's always I
Yeah.
find that sometimes, like, moms are shocked when they find out, like, oh, they have a cleft. They always assume that it's gonna be a boy, most of the times. But yeah, no, I it's so funny that you say that, like, having this feisty spirit but also she has an older brother, so I'm sure he keeps her, like, busy and on her toes.
And most of her friends are, like, his age too, so she's right up there with the boys.
She can keep up with the best of them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sweet. Did you all decide to do NAM at all? Was that a part of your
Yeah.
journey?
We had actually originally started going to so we're in Bryan College Station, Texas, and we had started out going to a place in Austin because they would take our insurance and everything, and they said they would do the NAM. Well, we had been there for maybe 3 or 4 visits, and honestly, it felt like they were scamming us because they kept saying, "Okay, we're gonna do the NAM next time," and they, like, kept having to redo her scans because they said she wouldn't be still, and I'm like, "But you got really good scans last time, what are you talking about?" And so they just kept putting it off, and we were like, "Alright, let's look at some different places." So, now we go to Houston, and they did do the NAM, they, like, got her fitted for it and everything the first appointment that we went, and we got it the second appointment.
What was that about? Did you ever find out?
They tried to bill our insurance for everything too, but our insurance wouldn't pay them because they didn't do something right on their end with the insurance, so insurance was like, "No."
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is odd.
It was
Yeah.
crazy.
I'm glad that you ended up like, you decided to go elsewhere. I think a lot of people feel like, "Oh, I'm just here," and they just stick
Yeah.
with what they're, like, being told to do. I
Mhm.
always tell people, if you're not comfortable with your team, you are more than welcome to find another team. You
Oh,
can
yeah.
do research. You can even ask on in the groups as well. Of course, don't ask who's your favorite surgeon, because everybody's just gonna say
Say their
their
own,
own
yeah.
surgeon, so you're just gonna get it's just not useful, but you may ask, "Oh, what a list of doctors in whatever area," or I know the ACPA, I wanna say they have a list as well that you can refer to. So please don't
Yeah,
be afraid to switch, like, you can change teams at
yeah.
any point. I think also people don't wanna deal with the hassle because of, like, insurance and all the crazy mess that can happen.
So we actually ended up we were supposed to originally be going to Houston, but then there was a thing with the insurance, they wouldn't take it, and we are like, "Alright, we'll try Austin." But then we ended right back up at the same place that we had originally supposed to go on to because something changed in their system. They're like, "Oh, we can take your insurance now." We're like, "Cool, we're coming."
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad that worked out. So in terms of the journey, did she of course, all babies, they hate the NAM, but some babies don't ever adjust to it, or what was that experience like with having to do the appointments and the taping and all the things?
She hated having her face touched. Even if we weren't doing the NAM and, like, putting the NAM on, she just "Stay away from me." Um, but I would say that she adjusted pretty well, like, after the first few times of wearing it and constantly wearing it, like, she got used to it, she was drinking out of her bottle really well, and it it really wasn't that terrible of an experience. Now, I did hate having to change it because she would scream and scream, and it just broke my heart, but once we got it on, everything situated, and after a few minutes, she was, like, fine, being her happy self again, so
Yeah.
it wasn't that terrible of an experience.
Yeah. Do you remember how long she wore
So,
it?
she wore it for oh my goodness, maybe almost 2 months?
Yeah, that sounds right. I don't know. I've heard 2 months. So, yeah, no, it's so funny. I always just like I was sharing with you, like, before interviews, I'm not the expert in anyone's story, so
Okay.
you know your story best. And so, would you, like, recommend the NAM for families or did you see significant improvements in the gap?
Yes. I have a bunch of, like, before and after pictures from when we weren't doing the NAM to like, the very end of the NAM, and it's so much closer
Oh,
together.
wow.
I would recommend it, but it might not be for everyone, like, every cleft is different, I think, and, like, taping works too. Because even just the month before we actually got the NAM that we were just taping, it also made everything closer together.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I've also heard as well. Now, you're going into surgery. You said about 4 to 5 she was about 4 or 5 months during that time,
Mhm.
and she
Yeah.
had nose and lip. It must have been, I wouldn't say intense, but it's 2 areas, and so what was your emotional preparation going into that? And then also just, like, practically, how did you prepare at home or What did you do to make sure that you all were comfortable during this time?
We Man, I cried a lot. We're gonna lose her pretty cleft smile, like, we're not gonna see it anymore, but she's gonna have this new beautiful smile. But it was just really emotional, and going into it, we left the night before, and our son stayed here with grandparents, but we took her, we went and stayed in a hotel and just spent time with her without all the tape and stuff on her face.
Oh.
Um, and then woke up the next morning, went, and she was ready. They came and got her, and I just cried and cried. And they so her surgeon sent updates throughout the surgery. Okay, we're doing this now, we're doing this. Um, and then he came out after to show us. We couldn't go back just yet, but he came out and showed us like a before and after picture, and we were like, whoa. Like, she was still like a little swollen and everything, but it was completely different. I was like, she doesn't look like the same baby anymore. But then I got to go back and see her, and she was still, like, super groggy and stuff, but she ate a bottle,
Yeah.
and then they sent us home same day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's like outpatient. That's wild.
Yeah, yeah, that one was.
Wow. Okay. So that was actually really good that he showed you a picture first, because as you've shared, I don't think that a lot of moms are prepared to see that big change. And I
Yeah,
think that initial shock, like when you're going back to recovery to hold your baby, to comfort them, to finally see them after surgery, it's like, whose baby is this? You have that
yeah,
initial like shock of, like, is this the right one? Look at the tag. Like you're
man,
so I think in doing that, it just is that middle point where they can show you like, hey, this is what she's gonna look like, so you can have time to, like, process that versus
yeah,
coming down back to recovery where there's all these other babies and there's just a lot going on, and so I really like that idea. I haven't heard of a surgeon doing that. I also very rarely do I hear that people get to go home. I've only heard one other case that was like that, but I guess obviously she did well. I hope her
yeah.
recovery went well. Did you all use the arm restraints and that type of thing? How did you keep her away from the site?
So we had the arm restraints, and I can't remember how long she wore them for, maybe a week or 2, and then they were like, "Alright, you can probably take them off, like, she's fine." But we also had to do and the name is escaping me, the things that go in the nose
Is it
to, like
nasal stent?
yeah, nasal stents, that's what they were. Could not remember that for the life of me, but we did that for a while, and honestly, those were worse than the NAM.
Really?
For me, I hated shoving those things up her nose, and she hated it too, and if we didn't get it just right, I'd have to take everything off and redo it.
Oh, because you have to tape it in. Well, I
Yeah.
didn't realize that. I thought
You
you
have
were
it
just
crisscrossed on her. Yeah, they, like, go up, and then there's, like, little tabs that, like, crisscrossed on her nose to hold everything up.
oh, wow. Yeah. What's the purpose of that? Just to have it molded or something? Like,
Yeah, it was to help keep her nose from caving in,
mm,
essentially, and it still her nostrils still ended up sinking down just a little bit, but I think it could have been a lot worse if we hadn't done that in the beginning.
yeah. I wonder, do you know if that's the normal protocol they give? Because I only see some babies with the nasal stents. Is that you think some teams recommend that, or is that, like, universal?
Um, I really don't know. I've probably seen about half and half,
Univer
like, some have, some don't, so it might just be the surgeon's preference.
Yeah,
I'm not really sure.
it's about, like, methods and stuff and what, like, best practices are, of course. So, of course, so that other moms can ask for them as well. If they don't suggest nasal stents and you find that they worked really well, even though you hated using them, but they may have served
Yeah.
their purpose, other moms can ask their team for them as well. And what do you think, like, other moms should do to prepare for cleft lip surgery or cleft palate surgery?
Just do a lot of research and don't be afraid to ask your team questions, because I had a lot of questions written down, and I asked him, I was like, "Okay, are we gonna have to do this? Are we gonna have to do this?" And then just being in the mom groups and that community, like, also besides asking your team, like, if you ask a question on there, somebody's gonna answer you, somebody's gonna have a similar experience to you, and it's really helpful to, like, look on that and see what other people have been through. Okay, I could expect this or I could expect this. That was really helpful for me.
Yeah, I thought that as well, like, just going back to what I was saying earlier, it's like, "Oh, this the same thing is, like, happening to you as well." Literally, like, the same
Mhm,
thing. We're being told the same thing, baby is responding the same way, like, all of it's
mhm.
same, and it's just, of course, everybody's situation is, like, a little unique to them, right? But generally, we are, like, all along the same journey, and
Mm,
it's
and you
actually
get some of the validation from the other moms in that group. It's so nice.
yes, that is the perfect word for it. It's validation. You feel like, "Oh, I'm not crazy." Ugh,
Yeah.
I hate to use that word, but it's like, yeah, I'm not, like, just losing it. Do you think is something, that you wish people knew about children that are born with a cleft lip or palate?
I guess one of my big things is they're not different from any normal kid. Like, they might have a little trouble eating or sucking out of a straw, might need some speech therapy, but they're the same as any other kid. And just because I've had a couple of people bring up to me, gosh, what was it? Somebody sent me a thing on Facebook to fill out for kids with disabilities. And I'm like, yeah, I guess it's a physical disability, but she doesn't really have a disability. Like, she's meeting all her milestones still. Like, she's still the same as any normal kid. She just looks different.
Yeah, I think that's difficult to, like, to grasp or to, like, get to I don't know, to approach, like, intended people, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
people that genuinely want to help, but they just don't know what to say.
Yeah. They just don't understand it because cleft lips and palates really aren't something that's talked about that much. Because it's like we were talking about earlier, when some parents get the news like their kid has it, they're like, "What?" And they, like, have to go do all this research because it's not super well known and people don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah. How did your extended family, like, react to it or respond? Was it something that you shared with them, like, right away? Or I remember I was having a conversation with one mom, and she's I had pamphlets ready, like, I I was, like, informing my entire family, which I love that because I was actually someone who, when I found out, I shut down, and I
Yeah.
didn't share right away, partly because I didn't understand it, and I wanted to understand it before I told
Mhm.
people about it. And so what how was your approach to sharing it with your family?
Think that we ended up telling them the same day that we found out, like, for sure that she had it, but we waited until later that night because after we found out, we just had our phones off and we just
Yeah.
kinda talked as a family, "Okay, this is what this means, this is what we're gonna do." So we ended up calling our families later that night and telling them, which they knew it was a possibility because we told them about the first scan, like, "Hey, this is what they think, and we're going to get some more scans to see if it's true." I think they took it pretty well. They were still just as excited to have another baby in the family. They were like, "All right, just let us know how we can help. Let us know when the surgeries are so we can be prepared." And they're just all really great. And they were very helpful. And they didn't do any of the NAM and taping stuff, but they had to learn how to do the nose stents because my husband went on a vacation and left our kids with both sets of grandparents for a little bit of time, so we had to send them a video of, like, how to put it in. They hated that. They were like, "Don't do this to us again."
Isn't it? Oh, that's so seriously, like, kudos to you because I remember before my daughter had her palate repair, if I, like, gave my daughter if I handed her over, like, to for someone else to feed her and you had any, like, hesitancy or, like, your face looked like you lacked any confidence, I was like, "Give me back my baby."
Yeah.
So I had so much like postpartum anxiety over let me just protect her. Like I'm the only one who can do this
Yeah.
right or the right way, or I know what they told me and I've done all the research. And so it kind me a little bit. You can't do it all, right? Like it does take a village. It had
Yeah.
me very stressed. And I was like, I was a hot mess. And I think that is something to take away as well. Allow other people to help, right? Go take the
Well, and
vacation. Like, it'll be
I was like
okay.
that at first too, the didn't really want anybody else to feed her and that kinda thing. But once I finally realized, like, "Oh, I'm super overwhelmed with having
Yeah.
a 20-month-old and then having her and all the stuff that's going on with her," I people finally were like, "Can we feed her? Can we help feed her?" And so I'd show everybody how to angle it and how to hold her just right, but I was glad that our vacation was like, it was a month or a little over a month after her first surgery. So, nobody had to worry about all the NAM and stuff, and that took a lot of pressure off. I was like, "Okay, it's just the nose stents. That's not as much to do as all that." But it was really hard to leave her.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember this was actually a really good thing. The first time that I left my daughter was with my mom, and I have 2 other siblings, and the whole night I was so nervous, I was so anxious, I couldn't stop talking about my daughter, and I was just like, "I gotta get home, I gotta get home." I gotta get home. And I was clearly like not having a great time because I was so anxious. And I said, my mom, I don't know whether she knows what to do. And my friend told me, she's Laura, there's 3 of you and y'all are still alive. So I'm sure she can
Yeah,
manage.
they'll figure it out.
Yeah, and that was like all that I needed, really. I'm like, you're so right. She will figure it out.
Mhm,
And I'd still left, but it was just one of those things that it's yeah, that's so true. I can like we're here.
and if they
It
can't
was
figure it out, they'll fall.
yeah, it's she's done it with 3 and there's only 1 there, so I'm sure she could manage. What do you think has been, like, the hardest part of the journey? Was it, like, diagnosis or the surgeries? Maybe as we just talked about, maybe, like, postpartum anxiety, anything that you can share that maybe was, like, really tough?
I think for me, I had postpartum depression pretty bad after she was born, and I was on medication for a while. So until the medicine started kicking in for me the first, like, month and a half of her, that was really hard for me and just figuring out everything, and it took me a while to bond with her because of that, and so that made it hard. I just remember feeling like I felt all the mom guilt because I already had 1 kid, and I'm like, "Why am I bringing another kid into this world? Like, I already have 1. What am I supposed to do with 2 of them now?" And just holding her in the hospital, like, she just didn't feel like my baby for a while until the meds started working and I started actually talking to my husband and to my doctor. So, like, the first couple of months of that were pretty difficult, along with trying to figure out the taping and the NAM, and I'm like, "Wow, this is just a lot."
Yeah. Yeah, I think that sometimes we can be really hard on ourselves too. And I always heard about you can be like, you can experience a lot of shift in your hormones and you can start feeling things that like you may have never felt before, thinking things. Like I had so many intrusive thoughts that it was, what am I thinking? Like, this is so
Yeah,
wild. And I think that the NICU stay doesn't help. Like it creates this environment that is, like, stressful to be with your baby, and maybe in our minds, we associate, like, the baby with stress, like, with this I don't wanna say, like, burden, but this you have to go, like, you have to go, you can't be bedside all night, it's very
yeah,
it doesn't feel it's not the best place, and I'm grateful for those, like, NICU teams that really they try really hard to make parents comfortable and to
right.
really provides support and understanding. And I'm so glad that you were able to talk to your husband about it and talk to your team about the way that you are feeling. And I don't know, what advice would you give to someone that is experiencing something like that? Specifically, of course, our audience are cleft parents, cleft moms. What advice would you give to someone?
just don't be afraid to reach out to people. I stayed closed off for so many weeks, just not really talking or interacting with anyone, including my husband. Like, we were fighting a lot just because I didn't tell him what was going on inside my brain and I was acting crazy. And so I finally started talking to him after there was this girl that I went to school with, and I remembered that she had a post on Facebook like the year before about postpartum depression. And I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna ask her. I'm gonna ask her like how she knew to ask for help and that kind of thing. So I reached out to her and she told me her story and it was similar to mine actually. Like it also took her a while to bond with her second baby. And so she told me kind of everything that she did, like who she reached out to. And after that, I was like, okay, like I need to call my doctor. And so I did and went to the doctor and it was a lot better after that. But yeah,
Yeah.
just don't be afraid to talk to somebody because that's the time when you need somebody the most.
Yeah, for sure. I think that first, that's super commendable of you to even reach out to her because, of course, people don't want to share like at their most vulnerable moment, hey, I'm struggling. And so that
Mhm.
was very, yeah, I commend you for that, for just like taking that leap and just saying, hey, what did you experience to see if you had similarities
Well,
there?
and I don't even really know her. We're just more of like acquaintances at this point, but it honestly felt better to tell my struggles and talk to somebody that I wasn't necessarily close with, if that makes sense. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, she doesn't really know me either, but she's been through something similar and maybe she's not judging me as much as maybe someone I'm super close to would because I'm not acting like myself.
Right. So it's like someone that knows you enough, but not so you're not so close to where you feel like you're gonna be judged or it's like a
Yeah.
little bit of a space. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's full advice. Obviously, if you're feeling anything like that, then you should definitely seek out some sort of resource or help or reach out to someone who is willing to of course listen because that's super important and valuable. I think one of the things I also heard this is just in like the motherhood and the pregnancy apps. But so I did hear about that. I feel extremely guilty because I'm having a second child and how can I share all of my love to 2 children when they I guess in this situation, they're like, "I have a toddler and I love them, we're best friends, and I just can't believe I'm, like, having this other baby," and all of these things.
Oh, yeah, that was me to a T.
Yeah.
But now I look back and I'm like, why did I ever feel that way? I love both of these kids so much.
Yeah, I think you don't recognize what you're capable the love that you're capable of, like, what you're able to give, and even, like, with all of those struggles, I think that sometimes when people find their diagnosis or find out about their child, they're like, you have that guilt of even feeling, am I gonna love my child even if they're gonna have a facial difference? And then you feel guilt for even thinking that. You like it's like this cycle.
Yeah.
And yeah, it is really challenging all those feelings that come up. Just in closing, what do you think has been the biggest lesson that you learned throughout your journey?
Oh gosh, the biggest lesson. Sorry, you might have to edit this a little bit. I had time to think about this and now I'm like, what's the lesson?
No. And it can also be something that you've already like shared. You can just say,
Yeah,
as I've shared before, or like, I think of all of this would be the biggest. Yeah.
I would have to say the biggest lesson that I learned is things aren't always as bad as they seem. Like, my brain is really good at creating like worry that shouldn't be there and just like being anxious about stuff and making things out to be like the worst possible outcome, but it's really not that bad. Like, having a cleft baby is definitely a rough journey, but like you get through it and you're stronger for it. And those babies are resilient and they're tough.
Yeah.
And I think it's just a lot of learning and growing together and just spending time with them, getting to know them, and just seeing how tough they are just getting through all of these surgeries and all the NAM, the taping. You learn so much about your kid and you learn so much about yourself. And you're like, wow, we made it through this and it wasn't that bad.
Yeah. It's so funny, like, I talked with other class moms about this. It's like now you go from a point where you're so worried about things to be going on autopilot and you're like, "When's my next appointment?" Like, "When's the
Yeah.
next one?" And then you're like, "Yeah, mom, no more appointments." And you're like, "What?" Like, "I've been
Mhm.
going to the clinic for like 2 years."
I know. And then you get to the point where they're 2 years old, they're going in for a checkup once a year. And half
Yes.
the time, have to remember, "Oh, yeah, they were born with the cleft, and we did all this stuff." Like, did that actually happen?
It's so wild. Yeah, no, that's definitely a great takeaway for sure. Thank you so much, Hannah, for your vulnerability today and just like sharing your story. And I just, I feel so indebted that per you to come on and just share your story with us. And of course, your time. Like, I never take that for granted at all. So I think that's really special. And I hope that your story can help someone as well.
Yeah, thank you. It was super great to be on and finally meet you face to face.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
It's been great. Sometimes I shy away from this kind of stuff and, like, talking about myself, but I love talking about Marley's story, and I hope that it can help somebody, and that's why I wrote the book about her, 'cause I want people to read it and hear her story and be like, "Oh, we had a similar experience, like, that can help me." So the book I wrote, it's called The Prettiest Smile, and it actually told from my son's perspective. So when he was and so he's just telling about Marley's experience from her birth to her first surgery and all the things that we went to, all the nitty-gritty, and in the end, it ends with her getting her forever smile and that it's still the prettiest smile we've ever seen.
Oh my goodness. So my mouth is open because I feel like so many parents literally ask about, "Oh, what do you recommend any book that I can give for siblings or family members?" And that's so perfect. I love that. Yes. Where can people find it? Is it on Amazon? Yes, I love that. We will also have a link to the book in the show notes as well, and I can also add it whenever we I'll add it to Instagram whenever we post for this episode so that you all
Okay,
know
cool.
how to act it and get the prettiest smile. I love that. That's so beautiful. But yes, thank you so much. And thank you all for listening to the Our Forever Smiles Clef Mom Diaries of Support podcast. Be sure to subscribe and submit a review of the podcast wherever you listen. I hope that you've enjoyed this audio experience. Maybe you cried a little, laughed a little, but more importantly, I hope that you feel a little piece of reassurance and even joy in your journey. Talk to you next week.